So for my fancy dress costume, I've decided to go with the Mermaid from Weldon's Practical Fancy Dress for Ladies. I'm going to be using these two patterns. Hopefully, this will give me something good to start with so I don't have to draft too much on my own. Here's all of my fabric from the stash, which should hopefully work pretty nicely for this. The costume is recommended to be made in a pale green and shrimp pink. So here's what we've got. This one was garbage picked, so this should be a $0 project. Hooray! The first thing I'm doing is assembling the basic skirt and a bodice mock-up to check the fit. It turns out I'm quite short-waisted compared to the pattern, so I'm going to shorten the bodice quite a bit, and I'm also raising the shoulder seam and cutting the hem a bit shorter. There is nothing like thinking you found the perfect fabric in your stash, just to find out it was actually a dress from the thrift store. I spent 2 hours picking this apart, and we'll see if I can fit all my pieces on it. It fits. Finish off all the edges on my bodice pieces, and I've got the jazziest of linings. I've used a bit of some theatrical techniques to finish this off because I do work in theater, I can't help myself, so there's a combination of serging, some bias binding, and some shaped facings where I needed them. I've also left about an inch seam allowance on my side seams, and I've finished my fronts and backs separately, so that after it's sewn together, I can just pop open the seam and I've got the option to add an extra 2 full inches into my bodice, should I ever need it. On to finishing this up before I move on to the skirt. Okay, so I've got my bodice done. I've got my underskirt. Next step is this tail. I think I'm gonna try cutting out all these scales individually because I'm a monster, and putting them onto some kind of shaped base and some little fin thing at the bottom. So I'm gonna go figure out what that's gonna be. Alright, so I've got my tail piece cut out and lined and everything ready to go. And I've done a quick paper mock-up of the fin bit back here. And I've cut out some test paper scales. I'm going to cut these out of a variety of different materials. The fashion plate suggests shrimp pink for your tail, so I hope this is shrimp pink enough. Yeah, so time to cut out 80 bajillion scales to sew onto this thing. Alright, so I've got my fin piece cut out. I added some of these little pointy scallop things, and I'm going to kind of pleat this into a nice little fin shape, and I think I might sew a little piping in here for a little extra texture, and gosh, do I love piping. Well, I am out of pink thread, but I got all my cording stitched in. I've done my scale samples for the tail just to see how things were looking, and I cut out 3 different colors, but I'm not quite sure how I'm feeling about these light pink ones. I think they stand out a little bit too much and look a little too similar to my fin color, so I might try rearranging it without the light pink ones and see how I feel about that instead. Okay, so I've rearranged, I've taken the pink ones that I didn't like off, and I think this is looking much more cohesive than with the light ones. So I think I'm gonna go with this, and fingers crossed I have enough of those fabrics, I guess. Alright, so I've stitched all of the scales that I have cut out. I have no idea how many are in here. I don't know if it's enough. I have to iron them all now. Send help. I started working on these when I got up this morning. I have been working on scales all day. It is 5:30, and I still have all of those to press. Ah! to attach the scales, I'm pinning each scale individually in rows to make sure I have the whole tail fully covered. I ended up needing to make 2 more batches of scales, as the first set only got me about a third of the way, for a whopping total of 182 scales. And after everything is pinned, I stitched each row of scales by flipping the other rows out of the way as I stitched, until they're all on. Alright, I've attached some this like green floral trim stuff as my seaweed, and I've got a bag of seashells that I collected at the beach a couple years ago, I don't know, but I think I'm gonna sew some on for a little extra trim and maybe some pearls or something, I don't know, we'll see.